Hello, another week. And it's the start of the month, so we get the Joker chart from the United States of America. And it's still looking shocking. It is still 4.5% down from the start of the recession. Unemployment is 4.5% higher than it was at the start of the recession. Slowly getting back up there, but very slowly getting back up there. Let's go to another calculated risk chart to give this perspective in time. This chart going back to 1960 and the unemployment rate in red and the recession bars in blue. You can see where we are now, coming down from the worst of it, of the Great Recession, can be compared to the recession of 81, 82 and 83, where unemployment was higher and took its time to come down as well. But come down it did, and it came down, but went up again slightly in the 91 recession, came down again, up in the 2001 dot-com crash, down again, only to go up again in this Great Recession. So that's the perspective of time. And so I went to Fred, St. Louis Fed people, to get what could be affecting this. And we've got the effective Fed funds rate here with the same time perspective as the last calculated risk chart on unemployment. And as you can see, in the early 80s, 81, 82, 83, the Fed funds rate, the interest rate, was 17–18%. The thing is that from there, that was Volcker putting it up to break the back of inflation, there was always the chance, not just the chance, but what would happen was that the interest rate would come down, making it always easier and easier and easier through those decades, through the 80s, 90s and 2000s, to take on more credit, to take on more debt. And that's what happened. We've come from that 18% down to the last 3 years of effectively zero. So that is the Fed doing what it could to make that bad situation in the 80s and through the decades better by bringing the Fed funds rate down. But now it is zero and the Fed can't do much more. Other things have to happen. Let's leave America and go to Russia and find that the leader of Russia's only independent election monitor was detained. I'll leave it there. No need to read it. The elections in Russia and Putin's party are going to get in. Putin's going to take over as the new Tsar. And it's quite just obvious the way things are going there. And one really has to be sorry for the Russian people. This is a BBC article. I'll just read the 3 little paragraphs. A report in Saudi Arabia has warned that if Saudi women were given the right to drive, it would spell the end of virginity in the country. The report was prepared for Saudi Arabia's Legislative Assembly, the Shura Council, by a well-known conservative academic. Though there is no formal ban on women driving in Saudi Arabia, if they get behind the wheel, they can be arrested. Who do we feel more sorry for here? The women that can't drive, or the well-known conservative academic who says that the right to drive would spell the end of virginity in the country? I'm sure he knows what he's talking about. FX Trader gives us Italy's extra budget bill taps wealth and helps banks. Italy's new technocratic government announced new budgetary measures late Sunday in what Prime Minister Mario Monti describes as an effort to distribute the sacrifices needed to keep the country's pledge to the European Union partners and balance its budget by 2013. Monti said the decree would save Italy both in the economic sense of avoiding collective impoverishment, a risk cited by his welfare minister, and the political sense of being blamed for the possibility or the possible blow-up of Europe's single currency. After all, they wouldn't want to be blamed for it, and this is quite a dynamic that is going on at the moment, that everyone steps away from the edge because they don't want to be blamed for blowing up Europe's single currency. And yes, I've seen the video of the Italian pension minister crying while announcing these measures. In Ireland, similar things happening. The Taoiseach, Enda Kenny, has addressed the nation ahead of more austerity measures in the upcoming budget. In a historic televised address this evening, Kenny said that it would be a tough budget, but warned that it has to be. He said that under his government 50 quangos will be abolished or merged, and the public sector will be downsized by 23,000 people. He said mistakes which brought the country to this point must never be allowed to happen again, and told his viewers that you are not responsible for this crisis, but you have to pay for it. In a different newspaper, the Taoiseach Enda Kenny is expected to concede this week to a demand by Germany for legally binding economic government throughout Europe and especially the Eurozone. That's Europe, 27 countries, Eurozone, the users of the euro currency, 17 currencies. In return, Mr. Kenny anticipates that the European Central Bank will act immediately to create a firewall of cash to give Eurozone governments time to repair their finances. The Taoiseach is also holding out other possibilities, including eventually that a form of Eurobonds be issued which would effectively collectivise the debts of member states. Mr. Kenny has said that he expects Europe's leaders will this week also agree to fast-track a range of measures intended to boost sustainable growth and job creation. And it seems to me that Mr. Kenny is expecting and anticipating an awful bloody lot. Europe, Spanish unemployment continues to rise. Down at the bottom we get that taking the total number to 4.4 million after the sharpest rise in more than 2.5 years recorded in October. The problem here is obvious, the rise in unemployment and the fact that the government has to pay for it and doesn't get tax income from unemployed people. But the fact that these unemployed people will not really be unemployed, they will start working on the black. And that will get ingrained more and more into the economy of people working on the black, which makes it all the more difficult to get money into the central treasury. Even when things turn, people stay with the idea of working on the black. And this will be a terrible problem sweeping through Europe at the moment. Gavin Davis gives us Germany is winning the debate on fiscal union and states very clearly in this article the different visions that basically what we have is the creditor countries like Germany have and the different visions that the debtor countries have. And as he says, Germany is winning the debate on fiscal union, in other words, Germany representing what are the creditor nations, is winning this debate and most probably will win the negotiations at the end of this week. But I am not so convinced, because although the creditor nations have the money, they have the gold, they do not have the votes, because the debtor nations are more numerous. But as I've said too many times now to be repeating again, whatever they decide at the end of this week is totally and utterly irrelevant to the real problems that are undermining the European euro currency. Everyone is absolutely praying that they agree something at the end of the week. Everyone says they absolutely must. I say it's irrelevant if they do, and I'm even going to say I don't even think they're going to agree. They're not even going to agree. They're irrelevant agreements. Because Germany is in the lead on this. They are winning the fiscal debate, or the debate on fiscal union. But just telling these debtor countries that they're going to have to pull up their socks and do better, or this and this, A, it's not going to help anybody, and B, the people, their countries that Germany is talking to, and Germany is talking to representatives of peoples of countries, and they have to go back to their country and say something to their people, and they'll want some sort of quid pro quo. They, like Enda Kenny, will be hoping, envisaging that they will get something for their agreement to go along with Germany that's winning the debate on fiscal union. And Germany isn't going to give them much, because there's not much Germany can give them. So it's not even going to be much a debate. And Enda Kenny's idea that they might have time to discuss some sustainable growth policies, that is just laughable. It's going to be a fun week. Bye.